things are changing to the spookier side for the wizard. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and today guys we're talking about changes in taste for the wizard, possibly a new genre being thrown into the mix. But before we get into that, please do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow, and you can check the description box down below for links to all my social media, including the Patreon, if you want to help support the channel, and the Discord, if you want to chat on a more regular basis. Now, recently I hit some burnout. And that was kind of genre burnout, where it was just like, I was reaching for sci-fi, I was reaching for fantasy, nothing was working. And then I reached for a category that I usually only dip into a few times a year, and all of a sudden it was like all the lights came on, we were back in business, we were off to the races. And that let me know I need to kind of throw in a third genre, so this could be, for the foreseeable future, going forward, you can see a horror or a scary story or just kind of a spookier tale thrown into the monthly TBRs, taking up one of those fantasy and sci-fi slots. And one of the things that I want from this video is I want to talk to you in the comments, and you giving me recommendations based off of what I've already read. And I've kind of got my tastes dialed in, and I'm open to trying new things. I don't like, specifically like, modern horror where it's like jump scares and slashers and stuff like that. I'm more into the suspenseful or the tone like horror. Basically, I've read, now I know you're going to say, but Andrew, that's fantasy. This is Empire the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. And what I love about this is a dark fantasy with vampires without leaning into YA tropes. And it's something new and refreshing, and I just really, really enjoyed this. And so, if you have recommendations like this for me, I would love to hear about them. In the same vein, we've got, I've got stuff in my hands. I need to figure out where I'm going to put things. Oh gosh! We're going to stick it over here. I'm going to get a tower of books that's going to fall over. We've got Mike Shell's Aching God. And this is also, again, on the fantasy side with horror. However, this has got like great nightmare landscapes. This has got demigods, dark gods. It's got archaeology into zombie and horror-infested Barrowlands. And I just really enjoyed that. So that's kind of what I liked about here. Great character growth as well for Auric Manteo. Fantastic stuff. Speaking of nightmares, we've got Nightfall. This is Nightmareland Chronicles by Daniel Barnett. I loved this. This is kind of like where the world is flipped on its head, and through some mystical means, the sun's gone out, and that triggered a break in psychosis for a lot of the people on Earth. And we've got this man on a mission to go try and find the vestiges of his family while exploring his backstory. I love this story. Love it. And then while not being strictly horror, this is more of a darker historical fiction, but I'm open to that as well. We've got Robert McCammon's Matthew Corbett. I've read his Boy's Life. I read half of Swan Song. I liked Swan Song, but it reminded me too much of The Stand. They were very, very similar stories. One's just infectious disease, the other one's nuclear fallout. But they've got both their factions and stuff like that. Good story, fantastic book, but I kind of put it down temporarily. I'll come back to it someday, but it just reminded me so much of The Stand. But anyway, I kind of like the darker historical fantasy of Robert McCammon. I do plan on picking up They Thirst at some point, which I know is a vampire story that he did. So Robert McCammon's on my radar, and he's to my tastes. Of course, I've got Ray Bradberry. This is October Country, and I know you're like, and Ray Bradberry isn't a horror author. Well, this is kind of like on the spookier side. We have his post-apocalyptic Fahrenheit 451. I love that. We've got Something Wicked This Way Comes with the Dark Carnival. I love that. We've got poignant stories about the Reaper in October Country. I love that. We've got Uncle Einar. All of that stuff. This is kind of his Halloween collection, and I really, really enjoy this collection. In that same vein, I also love Joe Hill's 20th Century Ghosts. Again, not strictly horror, but really, really good. Really, really good. This blew my hair back. This blew all the hair off my body. If we're going to talk about blowing hair back, this just blew it all off, and I've since regrown it in the interim of reading it and recording it. I love this collection. It's not necessarily horror, but some of the cliffhangers or sometimes the last line or the tone or the idea can be based in horror. Really, really like that. And then, of course, you know my bread and butter when it comes to horror is Stephen King. Of course, I'm going to hold up my copy of The Shining because why not? This is my folio. It's gorgeous. I'm going to show it off. But, I mean, I've read over 30 plus Stephen King novels. So if you've got recommendations for me that are very much in the same vein as Stephen King, please give those to me in the comment section. I would love to get those recommendations for you. Stephen King is just, it's a very important author to me. And I know Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. But, I mean, I'm constantly, like, I'm like throwing Stephen King heavily back into my TBR over the next 4 months. I've got at least 4 Stephen King books planned to be read here, and I'm just working my way through his backlog since rediscovering him a couple years ago. I've read probably 25 to 30 books in the last just 2 to 3 years of Stephen King. So he's a very, very important author to me. He's probably in the discussion, not the argument. Well, it could be an argument. He's in the discussion to be one of my favorite horror authors. And yeah, I absolutely love King. So if you've got King-like recommendations, please feel free to give those to me. And then just a few that I have already on my radar. We've got this. I'm assuming this is more of a darker side based on who it came from. This came from John from Talking Story. He gave me this recommendation for Harlan Ellison, and I believe this is, he's got a story in here called I Have No Mouth, Therefore I Must Scream, or something like that. Did I forget that? Passion Side, Lighter Side, Harlan's Scrapbook, Angry Gods, I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream. So I was close, but I was kind of wrong. Chatting with Anubis, The Deathbird. So this sounds like this is going to be a horror collection, which I love horror collections, so please recommend those to me as well. So I've got that on my radar. I've got Jonathan Mayberry. I know he's not necessarily horror, but he does kind of err on the spookier side of things, so I am going to be checking out Jonathan Mayberry. He's also got like a horror thriller. I believe the first book is Patient Zero. I want to pick that up and add that to my collection as well, so I can check that out. And then we've got, of course, the legend herself, Anne Rice. I've constantly been viewing Interview with the Vampire, which is the Lestat books. I know the first 3 are supposed to be really good, and then it's kind of hit or miss the further you get through the series, but Anne Rice is on my radar. And then I've got Peter Straub, and the one I don't own physically yet is Michael McDowell's Blackwater, which is a Southern Gothic novel that I'm interested in. So that's kind of where I'm currently at with the horror genre. That's what I've either read, or the authors I've read, and what I'm interested in, or where I'm going. And this is just really a cry for recommendations. I would love to get into more horror, just because it seems to jog me out of a funk. There's something thrilling, the expectation, the tension. And I'm not usually a tension reader. Like, if there's tension in my fantasy, it tends to annoy me. But if it's in the horror, all of a sudden I'm having a great time. I'm actually currently reading Finders Keepers by Stephen King right now. And the first time I was reading a lot of fantasy when I was reading this. And I was just like, I'm not enjoying all of the tension in here. I find it predictable. And now that I've come back to it, I'm loving the tension of this story. And again, I've already harped on how Stephen King may well be one of my favorite authors. I need to get some Stephen King shirts that I can kind of wear when I'm recording. That would be awesome. Anyway, sorry. Side note, tangent. I need to get more like bookish t-shirt merches. Like, I've got, just side note, like, whenever I go on Instagram just shows me t-shirts. One of them's like Gandalf with Gollum in a shopping cart and they're running down it. Anyway, I just love that, and I need to get some Stephen King ones or some horror stuff, just to kind of, I don't know, zhuzh up these videos a little bit for you. I don't know why we're talking about t-shirts when we're supposed to be talking about horror, and yet that's the side tangent of the brain of the wizard. But yeah, I am planning on probably throwing in at least one horror read a month going forward, which is why I need recommendations, because obviously I don't have enough to sustain that for the long term. Probably I've got enough for about a year or so, but at the rate I'm reading horror right now, or the spookier side of things, I'm tearing through some stuff, and I'm having a wonderful time doing it. So yeah, again, this is just a cry for recommendations. This is a plea for help. I know you guys are always great for recommendations, and yeah, I'm constantly adding them to my Amazon wishlist so that I can then buy them later and add them to this wonderful collection. I just want to kind of give a huge thank you to you guys. I really appreciate the comments. I really appreciate the interaction. And I look forward to your recommendations. That's all I've really got for today, guys. Till next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting my passion and my hobby. It means the world to me.